Welcome to the Wayne Bennett podcast, celebrating West Virginia's people, places, and the culture of Southern Appalachia. Now here's your host, Wayne Bennett.
Welcome to the Easy Come, Easy Go podcast. My name is Wayne Bennett. This is our 16th episode. And today I'd like to share an experience with you I had back in the early 70s. And I got to meet three famous people all in one day. And one of them was Bill Withers, who City of Beckley just celebrated putting up a marker in front of the Stratton Elementary now, and also dedicating a statue that will be placed in downtown Beckley. But I was a student at Morris Harvey College. And I also worked I was an intern at the Appalachian Educational Laboratory in Charleston. And my supervisor's name was Jody Connor. And one day we were talking, and she said, are you going to go see Bill Withers and James Dickey and Martin Sheen at Morris Harvey College? Well, I hadn't really heard anything about it. I was taking classes, working, and trying to take care of a young family, and just hadn't paid much attention to it. And she said, you ought to go. It's free for students, and you get to see these guys. Well, at that time, Bill Withers didn't have quite the name that he had later on, and neither did Martin Sheen. And I didn't even know who James Dickey was. But I decided I would go see this. So I went to James Dickey was the guy who wrote the novel Deliverance. And I don't know if you've ever seen the movie or not, but at the time it came out, it was kind of a shocking type piece of work. And it would probably be a little shocking even today, and the movie was made 50 years ago. But James Dickey was primarily a poet, and he graduated from Vanderbilt University, and he had several books of collected poems of James Dickey, and he was a Southern guy, spent a lot of his life in South Carolina, Florida, Tennessee, and those areas. But his first novel, he only wrote 3 novels in his life, and his first novel was Deliverance. And some of the Hollywood producers picked it up and decided to make a movie out of it. Well, they wanted to really go big time, and they tried to get guys like Marlon Brando, Clint Eastwood, and Robert Redford. There was several big names there. Jack Nicholson, but for a couple of them actually turned the roles down because they just didn't like the roles, or they thought might have been a little bit too risky. And then a couple of them had other commitments and couldn't quite get there. But anyway, it ended up that Burt Reynolds got one of the roles, and it kind of jump-started his career and opened up quite a few things for him. Ned Beatty was also primarily a Broadway star, but had not made any movies, and it kind of helped get his name out there too. Jon Voight was probably the biggest name in that particular movie, and his career had kind of got a little slow, and so it actually helped him too. But the movie came out and was quite a success. During the filming of the movie, James Dickey would go visit the scenes and the acting, and he got into it several times with the director, saying they left too much out of his book, and There wasn't the same story, and the problem was James Dickey didn't understand what the film was like, and usually they're much different. Or filmmaking, he didn't understand that, and so it got to a point, and of course James Dickey was known to drink a little bit, and a couple of times he came to the set and was drunk or intoxicated. And one particular time, he and the director got into a fight, and Dickey broke the guy's nose. And they finally, to get the movie done, they started making an agreement, and they actually gave Dickey a small part as the sheriff in the movie Deliverance. And I think they gave his wife at the time a small walk-in part, and his son, he had a small part also. So it kind of toned their relationship there. And so when the movie came out, it was actually nominated for 3 Academy Awards: Best Picture. It was the Best Director and Best Film Editing. And it took place in Georgia. Thank God it wasn't West Virginia, because the stereotypical characters that were in the movie were a little different, something that we wouldn't necessarily be proud of. But the movie went very well, made a lot of money. They later on, James Dickey only wrote three novels, and at one time they had considered making a movie out of a later book that he had written, but they didn't really think it was that worthwhile, or it wasn't quite that good. But Dickey went on and became extremely noted more for his poems. He was the poet laureate of the United States at one time, and during the Jimmy Carter inauguration, James Dickey read one of his poems at the inauguration. So he was pretty well known. He just basically talked about a couple things and what inspired him, but he died in his early 70s. He continued to drink extensively, even though he was an instructor at the University of South Carolina and Florida, and I think he worked up till almost the day he died. But eventually his alcoholism had got to him. But he seemed at the particular session that they had at Morse Harvey. It seemed like a cordial fellow, and learned a little bit about it, and he was pretty famous at that time. So it was worthwhile, and we were very up close. Only a small group of students got to ask questions, and then they brought Martin Sheen on, and Martin Sheen was an actor. At that time, he had been on television and in small roles in Mod Squad and Mannix and Ironsides, and he had a couple small movie roles in like movies like Catch-22. One of the bad parts for Martin Sheen, of course, he went on later and won 6 Emmy Awards in the show called West Wing, where he was a president of the United States, and he never won an Oscar, but he was or is an accomplished actor. One of his biggest downfalls, though, he was on Broadway, and his understudy, the guy behind him, was Dustin Hoffman. And the story that has been spread was that they offered the role of The Graduate, the movie The Graduate, to Martin Sheen. And he either turned it down, or he didn't want to take it, or he had other commitments or whatever. And Dustin Hoffman took the role, And of course, The Graduate was a huge moneymaker, and it just shot Dustin Hoffman straight up, and got him some other roles like in Midnight Cowboy and Rain Man and things like that. And where Martin Sheen still had a good career, he put out a good movie, Apocalypse Now, which was successful, but the problem with Apocalypse Now, it took them almost 2 years to make the movie, and then after they made it, it was about 2 more years before they released it. And by that time, Martin Sheen was 39, 40 years old, and when you reach that age in Hollywood, the roles change, and if it would have been released earlier, he might have received some better roles because he was younger. But one of the reasons that Martin Sheen came to this festival was he had done 3 movies as a young actor about West Virginia or had taken place in West Virginia. And the guy who brought him here was a guy by the name of Clyde Ware. And Clyde Ware was a screenwriter. He was from West Virginia, around Doddridge County. But he was a successful screenwriter in Hollywood, and he had written different stories like for Gunsmoke and shows like that. And so he came to Morse Harvey at the request of Clyde Ware. One of the movies of West Virginia that Martin Sheen had put out was called No Drums, No Bugles. And you can still get online and stream and watch this movie for free. And it takes place in Doddridge and Harrison County, West Virginia. And Martin Sheen plays, it's during the Civil War. And, of course, West Virginia was kind of divided with the South and the North. And a character, his name was Ashby Gadtrell, and that's who Martin Sheen was. And he was a conscientious objector. He didn't want to kill his neighbors who were in the North or supported the North. He didn't want to kill his neighbors who supported the South. And he just didn't want to kill anybody. And so when the war started, he went off into the woods, and he was married and had a young child. And his wife knew that that's the way he felt. He just didn't feel like the war was the right thing, or he didn't want to kill anyone. So he actually went off and lived in a cave, and he lived there for during the entire war. And the movie is about him and how he's surviving and how he's avoiding both the North and the South as a traitor, and didn't know how he would be accepted, if people discovered him. He did come back once to his wife and his child during the movie, but it's a pretty emotional movie. It's not a lot of characters, and Martin Sheen does a real good job in that movie, and it shows the movie in itself is worth watching just to see the beautiful mountainsides and scenery in West Virginia, some during the fall and the spring, and that's why Martin Sheen was and he was a young actor at this time, and I become a Martin Sheen fan. I really didn't even know who he was at that time, but I become a Martin Sheen fan just because of his dedication and to Clyde Ware. Unfortunately, Clyde Ware has passed away, but Martin Sheen is still around and has done several pretty big time programs. The third character I got to see was later that evening, and one of the guys who had helped bring him in was a local guy, Dave Morse. And when I was going to Morse Harvey, Dave Morse, I think he was taking some classes, and he was part of the Morse Brothers. He and his brother John, they sang mountain music and were extremely good at great voices, great musicians. And they were from Ivydale, West Virginia, in Clay County, and they for several years during that time, they had the Morse Family Old Time Mountain Music Festival, and people would come from everywhere, and they had several groups, and of course their group would perform also. But Dave Morse was helped get some of these people in and help make them feel at home. And the third guy was Bill Withers, and he showed up that evening, and he was in the Geary Auditorium there at Morse Harvey in Regelman Hall, and it held about 1,200 people, and it was packed. And a lot of students were there. Some of them might have been getting extra credit or whatever. Now I did know who Bill Withers was. I knew he was born in Slab Fork, and I heard "Ain't No Sunshine" on the radio. But he was still pretty young at that time, and he didn't get into music until he was about 31 years old, which was actually kind of old for trying to step through the doors and get in. But he in the Geary Auditorium, he talked to the people first, and he told them, about how he felt welcome. And he said when he was younger, he stuttered, and he was very shy. And as he got older, that the future just looked like, here I'm a black kid, I stutter, I'm shy, I'm poor. And it looked like he didn't have a lot of future, but maybe go into the mines or go overseas in the service. And so that's actually what he did. He joined the Navy, and he was explaining, saved his money. He went to a speech therapist, got rid of the stutter, and while he was in the Navy, he saved his money, and his plans were still that when he got out, he was going to he might open up a gas station, or he might go into music. Well, of course, we know that he chose music, and that was a good thing. He was very straightforward when he was talking to the people and answering questions and those kind of things. And he said that, coming back, it kind of, he was somebody that didn't talk a lot, but to be accepted by the people from where he was from, that was really important to him. And his songwriting was kind of straightforward with a touch of gospel. And he's even been described by some of the great songwriters like Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys, who called Bill Withers a songwriter. And but I learned a lot about Bill Withers that night, and he was saying that when he wrote the song "Lean on Me," that it started out, it was just going to be like a love song, but he wanted to get away from the standard romantic ballad type thing, and he just wanted to say that if there's anything I can do for you, let me know, and if there's anything you can do for me, I would certainly appreciate it. And that's how he wrote "Lean on Me." And of course, if you'll remember the movie "Lean on Me" with Morgan Freeman as the principal Joe Clark in Patterson, New Jersey, the song was really prevalent there. And Morgan Freeman did an excellent job. I'm not sure that a principal using those tactics would get by today, but the movie made the song, and the song made the movie, and it was has been very well received. Also during the talk, Bill Withers said that Aretha Franklin was his favorite singer, and he said that his clothes were Sears and Roebuck, and mainly Levi's, and that's what he actually had on that particular night that he spoke with us. He answered quite a few questions, and there were some younger kids were asking questions, and he made it a point that he answered all of them, and he even looked at the kids and said, yeah, I enjoy singing unless I have a sore throat, and I can write a song in a long or short period of time. It depends on luck. And he started talking about the song Grandma's Hands. Now, let's go back just a second. When he got out of the Navy, he worked at Douglas Aircraft for a while in California, and he was still, but he was writing songs. And even after he got his first big hit, Ain't No Sunshine, he wouldn't quit his job at Douglas Aircraft because he said the music industry was just a little too fickle. And but then later on, after a couple more hits, he did quit his job. But he explained about the song Grandma's Hands. And when he was born in Slave Fork, and then his family moved, him and his mother moved to Beckley, and he was primarily raised by his grandmother, and he went to Stratton High School in Beckley. But when he was younger, he learned his grandmother took care of him when he was very young, and then when he got to the point where she became a little older and feeble, then he had to help take care of her. And that was one of the things that he said that he learned. His grandmother was his first love, and that she was my first responsibility. And I had to look after her because she was getting old, and I was still just a little boy. But he remembered his grandmother. They would go to church, and he said that he would play the triangle, and she played the tambourine. And the church preacher, well, I think it was a Reverend Neal, had a great influence on Bill Withers at that time. And he said, they had good times, great music, and sometimes they would get to jumping, even at funerals, and they almost had to tie the caskets down. They would get going so wild. But he was spoke highly, and so those were the three big hits at the time: "Ain't No Sunshine," "Lean on Me," and "Grandma's Hands." Later, he had hits called "Lovely Day" and "Just the Two of Us." He won. He was in the Songwriter Hall of Fame. He was put in the Songwriter Hall of Fame in 2005, and then the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2015. He actually, after 1985, he wasn't performing and touring as much as he had been before. He kind of stayed in with some of the executives in the music business, some RCA people, and there was another label. I can't remember what it was now, but he didn't agree with the way they did things, and he let them know that he didn't agree with that, and so he just kind of quit touring. But it didn't totally take him out of the music business all by itself. The only thing that I hated myself was that he didn't live to see the town of Beckley honor him the way they did this past week, and they did a great job with the presentation of the prototype statue and the honor and putting the marker up there. And then there was bands playing downtown all afternoon, and Bill Withers Day, and it was it was really super nice. But it would have been much better if Bill could have been there, and that's That's just my feelings. But that was a great day for me, and I like I said, I didn't know Bill Withers that well. Didn't know too much about him. I didn't know too much about Martin Sheen. I'd heard a little bit about James Dickey, but after that particular day, I knew a whole lot about all of them, and it was a special day, and just wanted to share that with you. If anybody would like to get in contact with me, it's awbennett5050 at gmail.com. And like to talk with you. If you want to be on the show or you've got a story, and everybody's got a story. Everybody is important as far as we're concerned. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And until next time, remember, if you ain't dead yet, you ain't done yet. And see you next week. God bless you.